Have you ever noticed that the person who stays calm in an argument always seems to win? It's not because they have the best words. It's because they understand something most people don't. Power doesn't come from shouting the loudest. It comes from knowing when to be silent. Most arguments are like a wildfire. The more air you give it, the bigger it grows. The same goes for conflicts. If you keep feeding them with explanations and reactions, they only get worse. But take the oxygen away, the fire dies on its own. This is the power of restraint. Think of a chess master. He doesn't rush. He doesn't let emotions cloud his judgment. Instead, he lets his opponent make mistakes, overplay their hand, and lose focus. Then, with one decisive move, he wins. Arguments work the same way. The one who controls their emotions controls the game. When people argue, they desperately try to prove themselves. They repeat the same points, raise their voice, and hope that being louder makes them right. But the more they talk, the more they expose their weaknesses. They don't realize it, but every extra word is a sign of insecurity. And when you refuse to play their game, when you stay calm and silent, they start to feel it, the shift in power. Suddenly, their confidence cracks. They start doubting their own words. And you've already won, without raising your voice, without proving anything. Because the real battle isn't fought with words, it's fought with control. And here's the truth. Those who master silence master the world. So, do you want to be controlled, or do you want to be in control? The choice is yours, but don't go anywhere just yet. The last secret I'm about to reveal will change everything. You don't want to miss it. Before we continue, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss powerful lessons like this. And drop a comment below with the words, "I know my worth." Let the world know you are in control. Let's begin. 1. Stay cool while they burn out. Have you ever noticed how the person who loses their temper first is usually the one who loses the argument? It's not about who has the best facts or the loudest voice. It's about who can keep their emotions in check, while the other person falls apart. When emotions take over, logic disappears. The moment someone starts arguing with feelings instead of reason, they've already weakened their own position. They don't realize it, but every time they raise their voice, interrupt, or lash out, they're handing you the upper hand. The angrier they get, the more foolish they appear. And the calmer you stay, the stronger you become. It's like watching a fire consume itself. The more fuel you throw at it, the bigger it grows. But if you step back and stop feeding it, the flames burn out on their own. That's what happens when you refuse to engage in emotional chaos. You let the other person unravel while you remain untouchable. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the secret. You can't control how someone else reacts. You can't stop them from twisting your words, raising their voice, or trying to provoke you. But what you can control is your response. You can choose to stay composed while they fall apart. You can choose to be the steady rock while they get swept away by their emotions. Picture a skilled poker player. He doesn't flinch, doesn't react, doesn't show his hand. Meanwhile, his opponent is fidgeting, sweating, revealing every emotion with their body language. Who do you think has the real power? Not the one panicking, not the one making desperate moves. The winner is always the one who keeps their cool. Let me tell you about James. He found himself in a heated workplace debate. His colleague was furious, throwing accusations, interrupting, trying everything to get a reaction. But James, he just listened. No eye-rolling, no smirks, no defensive outbursts. He let the other person talk and talk until they ran out of steam. And when James finally spoke, his words were calm, clear, and precise. The result? Everyone in the room sided with him, not because he had the best arguments, though he did, but because he remained composed while the other person looked completely out of control. So how do you master this? First, pause before reacting. When you feel anger creeping in, take a breath. Don't let them pull you into their emotional storm. Second, lower your tone. When someone yells, responding softly makes them look even more unhinged. And finally, watch their energy fade. The more they lose control, the more ridiculous they seem. In the end, the person who stays calm always holds the real power. Arguments aren't won by the loudest voice, but by the steadiest mind. So let them rant, let them lose control, while you stand firm, untouched, and in complete control. 2. Turn the tables without lifting a finger. Most people think arguments are won by proving a point, but that's where they go wrong. The moment you start defending yourself, you've already lost ground. Why? Because now you're reacting. You're playing their game instead of making them play yours. When someone challenges you, the natural instinct is to explain, justify, and prove your position. But the harder you try to defend yourself, the stronger their attack becomes. It's like trying to fight quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Instead of wasting energy trying to convince them, flip the script. Make them explain. This is where sharp questions become your secret weapon. Instead of pushing back against their argument, guide them into tearing it apart themselves. The best part? You don't have to argue. You don't have to raise your voice. You simply ask questions so precise, so undeniable, that they trip over their own words. Think of it like watching a bad magician perform. If you sit quietly and let them go through their act, eventually they expose their own tricks. They slip up, reveal the wires, fumble the sleight of hand. The more they try to maintain the illusion, the more obvious it becomes that they have no real magic. Arguments work the same way. A weak argument can't survive under scrutiny. It collapses under its own weight. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." A calm, strategic mind will always overpower an emotional, defensive one. If you stay composed and put the burden of proof on them, their argument either holds up or falls apart. And in most cases, people argue not because they have a solid point, but because they want to be right. When they realize they can't justify their position, doubt starts creeping in. Let me tell you about Daniel. He was in a debate at work with a co-worker who claimed his project idea was unrealistic. Now, most people would have jumped into defense mode, explaining why the idea was solid, why it had been carefully thought through. But Daniel didn't do that. Instead, he simply asked, "What specifically makes you think it won't work?" The co-worker hesitated, then brought up a minor issue. Instead of arguing, Daniel followed up. "And how would that be different from how we handled similar challenges in the past?" The co-worker fumbled, realizing his argument wasn't as strong as he thought. He wasn't making a logical point. He was just opposing for the sake of it. Within minutes, he started backtracking, and Daniel had won without ever needing to push back. This is the power of letting the other person struggle with their own reasoning. Instead of defending, stay quiet and let them talk. The more they explain, the more they expose the flaws in their thinking. And the more you stay calm, the more they feel the pressure of their own words. Imagine a courtroom. The best lawyers don't win cases by screaming their arguments. They win by asking the right questions, the ones that leave the witness speechless, the ones that make the jury see the truth without being told. That's what you want to do. Instead of telling someone they're wrong, make them realize it themselves. And here's something to keep in mind. The person asking the questions controls the conversation. Arguments aren't won by shouting, by throwing facts, or by proving a point. They're won by making the other person see their own mistakes. So next time someone challenges you, don't react. Don't defend. Just ask, why do you believe that? Or, what do you mean by that? Then watch as they struggle to hold their ground. Let them talk. Let them dig the hole. And when they realize they've trapped themselves, you won't even have to say a word. 3. Silence speaks louder than words. Most people believe that winning an argument means talking more, proving, explaining, countering every point thrown their way. But the truth? Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence, when used with purpose, isn't weakness. It's a psychological weapon. It forces the other person to question themselves, to doubt their own words, and to unravel their own argument without you lifting a finger. Silence creates discomfort. When someone argues, they expect pushback. They expect resistance. They expect you to fight back with the same energy they're giving. But when you don't, when you just sit back, stay calm, and let the silence linger, that's when doubt creeps in. Suddenly, they start second-guessing themselves. Did I say something wrong? Do they know something I don't? Did I just make a mistake? That uncertainty, that invisible pressure, is where you win. It's like watching a boxer who keeps swinging but never lands a punch. Eventually, exhaustion sets in. The moment they start questioning their own strength, they've already lost the fight. Epictetus once said, "Let silence be your goal, except when speaking is more valuable." That's the key. Not every attack needs a defense. Not every argument needs a response. Sometimes saying nothing at all forces the other person to confront their own contradictions, their own insecurities, their own shaky reasoning. Take Alex, for example. He found himself in a heated workplace debate. His colleague was desperate to prove him wrong, talking over him, throwing out arguments, pushing for a reaction. But Alex, he just listened. No interruptions, no counter-arguments, no emotional reaction, just silence. And then, something interesting happened. The colleague started repeating himself. He started filling the silence, scrambling to justify his words, as if he needed Alex's approval to believe his own argument. And the more he talked, the more obvious it became. He wasn't as sure of himself as he wanted to appear. By the time Alex finally spoke, the damage was already done. His colleague had weakened his own position, all on his own. Silence is like a mirror. It forces people to see themselves clearly, and most people don't like what they see. Think of a courtroom. The most devastating moments don't come from the lawyers shouting over each other. They come when the witness is asked a question, and there's a pause, a long, heavy silence. That's when the truth starts slipping through the cracks. So how do you use silence to take control? First, resist the urge to respond immediately. Let the silence stretch. Let it make them uncomfortable. Second, maintain steady eye contact. A calm, unwavering look can shake someone more than 1,000 words ever could. And finally, let them break under their own weight. The longer the silence lingers, the more they'll try to fill it, often revealing the very weaknesses they wanted to hide. At the end of the day, silence is power. It makes them uneasy. It forces them to doubt themselves. And most importantly, it puts you in control, without you ever needing to say a word. 4. Disarm and redirect like a master. Most people think winning an argument means pushing back on everything the other person says, rejecting every point, proving them wrong at every turn. But here's the problem. When you fight everything, you look defensive, not logical. A smarter way: agree with what's reasonable, then subtly steer the conversation in your favor. The moment you acknowledge part of their argument, you throw them off balance. They expect resistance. They expect a fight. But when you say, "You make a good point," or "I see where you're coming from," it shifts the entire dynamic. Now, instead of two people clashing, it feels like a real conversation. And once they feel heard, they become far more open to listening to you. It's like martial arts. If someone pushes against you and you push back with equal force, it's a struggle. But if you take their energy, move with it, and redirect it, you stay in control while they lose balance. That's exactly how this technique works. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This means you don't have to prove yourself right at all costs. You don't have to argue just to win. True strength isn't about resistance. It's about strategy. A confident person doesn't fear agreement. They use it to guide the discussion where they want it to go. Take Sarah, for example. She was in a debate at work about a project strategy. Her co-worker was pushing an idea she didn't fully agree with. Now, most people would immediately argue and shut it down. But Sarah? She took a different approach. She said, "You bring up a great point about efficiency, and I completely agree that we need to streamline the process." That one sentence made the co-worker feel validated. But then, Sarah smoothly redirected. At the same time, if we take that approach, we might lose some quality. What if we combine both ideas to get the best of both worlds? Instead of an argument, the conversation turned into a collaboration, and by the end, the co-worker was agreeing with her. This is the power of redirection. When people feel like their ideas are being acknowledged, they lower their defenses. Their guard comes down. And when that happens, you're no longer fighting them. You're leading them. Think of a skilled negotiator. They don't sit there shooting down every point. They listen, they nod, they acknowledge. Then, once the other person feels understood, they guide the discussion in their favor. The result? No resistance. No unnecessary tension. Just quiet control. So next time you're in a debate, don't make it a war. Find common ground. Acknowledge it out loud. Then gently guide the conversation where you want it to go. Because real influence isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about making them want to agree with you. 5. Let them dig their own grave. Most people feel the need to correct, argue, and prove their point in every debate. But here's the truth. The more someone talks, the more mistakes they make. If you let them keep going, they will overextend, contradict themselves, and expose their own weak logic. And you don't have to do anything but watch it happen. People who argue emotionally or without a strong foundation always set themselves up for failure. When someone is too eager to prove they're right, they start throwing out claims without fully thinking them through. They exaggerate. They stretch their logic. And the longer they keep talking, the harder it becomes for them to stay consistent. It's like watching a reckless gambler. At first, they seem confident. They make bold bets, convinced they're winning. But the longer they play, the sloppier they get. And before they know it, they've lost everything. Not because someone beat them, but because they beat themselves. Zeno of Citium once said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." In other words, a person who speaks carelessly will eventually stumble over their own words. And when you give them enough room to talk, their own tongue becomes their downfall. Let me tell you about Eric. He was in a debate with a friend who insisted that his new business idea would fail. Instead of jumping to defend himself, Eric did something smarter. He just asked questions. Why do you think that? Can you explain that a bit more? How would that apply in a real-world situation? His friend kept talking, trying harder and harder to prove his point. And then the inevitable happened. He contradicted himself. First, he said the market was too small. Then, a few minutes later, he claimed that competition was too high. Eric didn't need to argue. He simply smiled and said, "So, is the market too small, or is there too much competition? Because it can't be both." In that moment, his friend realized his mistake. His argument didn't hold up, and Eric had won, not by debating, but by letting his friend trap himself with his own words. This is the beauty of patience. The more someone speaks, the more they reveal. The more they try to strengthen their argument, the more cracks begin to show. And when they finally trip over their own words, you don't have to attack. You don't have to be aggressive. You just have to gently highlight what they've already done to themselves. Think of a courtroom. The best lawyers don't jump in and shout over the witness. They wait. They let them speak. And then, when the witness says something that doesn't add up, the lawyer calmly asks, "But didn't you just say something different a moment ago?" In that instant, the case is lost. Not because of an argument, but because of a mistake the witness made all on their own. So next time you find yourself in a debate, resist the urge to jump in. Let them keep talking. Focus entirely on listening, not on preparing your next response. And when the moment comes, use one simple question to expose the contradiction. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't to fight. It's to step aside and let them destroy their own argument. 6. Let them drown in their own chaos. Emotional arguments are traps. They're not about logic. They're designed to pull you in, make you react, and throw you off balance. The angrier you get, the weaker you look. That's exactly what they want, to provoke you into fighting on their terms. But here's the secret. If you refuse to react, they lose all their power. People who argue emotionally aren't looking for truth. They don't want a rational discussion. They want to push your buttons, get a rise out of you, and drag you into their storm. The moment you take the bait, you're no longer in control. You're playing their game, fighting by their rules, and losing before you even realize it. But if you stay calm, if you refuse to engage, the trap turns on them. They push harder, they get more frustrated, and they start exposing themselves. They wanted to make you look bad, but now they're the ones unraveling. They wanted to control the situation, but now they look desperate, emotional, weak. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. That's the key. You don't win by lowering yourself to their level. You don't need to match their energy, raise your voice, or fight fire with fire. Instead, you win by staying above it. You let them exhaust themselves while you stay composed. You let them burn out while you remain untouched. Let me tell you about Kevin. He had a co-worker who loved to stir up conflict. Every time there was a disagreement, this co-worker would raise his voice, throw sarcastic comments, and try to embarrass Kevin in front of others. His goal? To get a reaction. But Kevin never gave him one. He never raised his voice. He never snapped back. He never let emotion take over. Instead, he answered calmly, with pure logic. And when his co-worker tried even harder to provoke him, Kevin just smiled. And you know what happened? The co-worker lost control. He got angrier and angrier, exposing his own lack of discipline. The more he tried to manipulate Kevin, the more foolish he looked. And Kevin, he didn't even have to fight back. He won just by refusing to engage. This is the power of detachment. When someone pushes your buttons, pause. Recognize the trap. Remind yourself that their words have no power unless you let them. Stay calm and respond with logic, not emotion. If they yell, lower your voice. If they provoke, stay neutral. If they try to make you lose control, stay unshaken. It's like watching someone throw punches at the air. The more effort they waste, the weaker they look. And by the time they're out of breath, out of energy, out of control, you're still standing, untouched. At the end of the day, people who argue with emotion want to drag you into their storm. But you don't have to follow them. Let them drown in their own frustration. That's how you win without even lifting a finger. 7. Say it. Own it. Then shut up. Most people think winning an argument means talking more, explaining, proving, and adding endless details to convince the other person. But here's the truth. The stronger your argument, the fewer words you need. A confident statement is like a blade, sharp, precise, and impossible to ignore. The more you talk, the more chances you give them to twist your words, find weak spots, or derail the conversation. But when you state your point and stop talking, you leave them with nothing to grab onto. They're stuck, forced to come up with a counter-argument on their own. And more often than not, they struggle. Think of a boxer who throws a single clean punch and then steps back. He doesn't waste energy swinging wildly. He doesn't give his opponent an opening. He lands his hit and lets the damage sink in. That's how speaking with precision works. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." In other words, when your argument is solid, let it stand on its own. You don't need to over-explain, over-justify, or beg for validation. Confident people don't try to convince. They state the truth, and that's enough. Take Jason, for example. He was debating workplace efficiency with his boss. His boss kept making excuses about why a new system wouldn't work. Most people would have argued for hours trying to prove their point. But Jason didn't. Instead, he said, "We can run a 1-week trial. If it works, we keep it. If it doesn't, we go back. No risk." Then he stopped talking. His boss sat there thinking. There was no room to argue, no excess words to attack. The silence was uncomfortable, and eventually the boss just said, "Fine, let's try it." Jason won, not by saying more, but by saying just enough. This is how power works. When you don't feel the need to explain yourself, you project confidence. And confidence is impossible to argue against. The person who speaks less often has more control, while the other person scrambles to fill the silence. So next time you need to make a point, say it, then shut up. Let your words settle. Let them struggle with the silence, because when you own your words, you don't need to say them twice. In the end, winning an argument isn't about talking the most, it's about control. Silence, sharp questions, and calm detachment give you the upper hand every time. Master these strategies, and you'll never lose another debate. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful insights. See you in the next one.